Welcome to Get on the Ark. I'm Darren Conrad, your host, and today's guest is a certified integrative health practitioner, a speaker, an Air Force veteran, and the best-selling author of Warrior Mom, and that's a mother's journey in healing her son with autism, and the founder of Autism Health. Um, Welcome, and Tracy Slepcevic.
Yep.
So welcome, Tracy.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So. Uh, I've heard bits of your story about your son and healthy baby and then vaccinations, and I'd like to hear tell us your story.
Well, unfortunately, my story is not one of a kind. It's the story of thousands of parents where, you take your child in for a regular routine, vaccine visit, right? Routine well baby visit. And they receive, routine vaccines, and you go home, they run a fever, they get sick, they scream uncontrollably. Um, with that particular vaccine, which was the MMRV, Noah also got measles with it. And so his fever was pretty ongoing. And with that was a regression. So he lost whatever speech he had. He lost a lot of motor skills, cognitive function, and that thus began my journey as a warrior mom. And it's a beautiful testimonial because I say God sent me angels on my road to healing, and it was perfect. It was so perfect.
Wow. So, at what age was he when he was vaccinated?
So Noah received the routine vaccines. He did not receive any at birth. He received the routine vaccines at 2, 4, 6 months, 1 year. 18 months was when he received the MMRV. And I can honestly tell you that every time I took him in, because he was an ear infection baby, which is traditionally, brought on from vaccines, a weakened immune system, and usually causes a lot of ear infections and allergies, asthma, seizures, so on and so forth. So from there, I noticed that, so first of all, she told me that him getting measles was just a rash. And it was just, it was a normal thing that children got from receiving the vaccines. And it's okay. It's just normal. Just go home, take some, by the way, rotate some Tylenol and Motrin. And now that we know that acetaminophen opens up the blood-brain barrier. And I think HHS released last week that acetaminophen is linked to autism. So how many times as a parent do we give Tylenol to our children when they get a fever? And of course they're going to get a fever. They're getting more vaccines in one little dose into one little body than a 600-pound man can handle. And so you have these little babies, and that's why between 2 and 6 months, children die from SIDS. So, you have so much that, their brains are fully inflamed, and some of them don't make it, unfortunately. But I was the lucky one. God put me on a beautiful journey. So after he received those vaccines, I saw a regression. I asked why he was regressing, and I was also told that it was normal. And I just trusted the pediatrician. I just kept on trusting, although my gut was like, wow, this just doesn't seem so normal. And from there, I was on this crazy journey. I still continued to vaccinate him because I didn't know any better. By the way, when you're military, you're programmed that vaccines saved lives, and they're very important. And I can tell you, in the first year of my military career, I received 17 vaccines. And that's not to count what I received the following 3 years. So this is a huge subject. especially today, what Kennedy and HHS is exposing, what Aaron Siri and Senator Ron Johnson and Dr. Rogers all exposed the other day in the Senate hearing. I don't know if you got to see that, but that was a big mic drop.
Yeah.
I was so happy. It was a very long Senate hearing, and I watched every minute of it. And I'll probably go back and watch it again. But man, the way that was laid out was just perfect. And nothing against Dr. Scott. Maybe another doctor just programmed, maybe paid off by big pharma. I don't know, but anybody at Stanford, they're going to be more on the liberal side. But there is no real science behind vaccines. And I'm all about, so people are like, well, aren't you about safe and effective vaccines? Well, if you can find a way for them to be safe and effective, sure. But I don't think that's possible. I believe in herd immunity. God created our bodies to respond a different way. So remember back in the day when the kid down the street got chicken pox and our parents send us to the chicken pox party. Hey, go get chicken pox. The neighbor has it. And but they don't do that anymore. So our children are relying on vaccinations, and they're not relying on that God-given herd immunity, which is the best way for them to have immunity to that virus. So, well, my son got the measles vaccine and he got measles and he didn't die. I got to tell you that. I got measles. My sisters got measles when we were kids. We didn't die. I know so many children. So they play it off that when a kid gets measles or a child dies of other causes, it might still have the measles at the time. That they want to promote that as, they want to fearmonger, right? And they want to announce it to the world, oh my gosh, they died of the measles. When that's not true, more children die of the actual injection. And I encourage people to watch that Senate hearing from the other day. I mean, Aaron Siri, how brilliant. It was very well laid out. And even Senator Ron Johnson just putting it out there. And at the end, I was like, when is he going to mention the parents? When is he going to mention the parents? Because you can have case studies all day long, but you have thousands of testimonials from parents. I saw my kid regress. And Senator Ron Johnson mentioned that at the end. He said, how about the parents? How about all those parents who watch their children regress?
Right.
So the beautiful thing about my story is that God sent me angels. I swear I was about to put my head through a wall. I had been through 2 preschools, a regional center that lost our paperwork, and they were supposed to forward it on to a clinical psychologist for us to get a formal evaluation. And a pediatrician who just kept telling me everything was normal. I said, is it possible my kid could have autism? And I want you to know, she actually went back when she found out that Noah did have autism. She went back in her records and documented twice that she recommended Noah get an evaluation for autism. And that was a lie. Talk about doctoring records. And then I went back and I ripped a strip off that woman. And so here we are. I don't know what to do. My poor kid, right? He's screaming at me nonstop. I don't know what to do for him. I don't know how to make him feel better. I didn't know anything about biomedical intervention. I was a psychology student at the time, and I was working as well. So, my son was crying for help. So lo and behold, I go into the office and my husband had hired a new front desk woman, and such an amazing woman. She worked for us long enough to tell me what to do, where to go, and how to do it. And she had a son with autism. And the crazy thing is, she only worked for us for a couple weeks, and then she's like, "I'm sorry, but my son really needs me. I need to go home." And then I never saw her again. Apparently, our kids went to the same special needs preschool, but I never saw her again. Talk
Wow.
about an angel that just comes in and out of your life. And then on the day where Noah was evaluated first through the school district, then I took that report to the regional center where he was formally evaluated by a clinical psychologist. And I'm here to tell you, nobody can diagnose autism but a clinical psychologist, not a speech therapist, not a doctor, not anybody else, not a regular therapist, a clinical psychologist. They are trained to diagnose. So if your speech therapist is like, I'm diagnosing your kid with autism so we can, sell you some speech sessions, that's garbage. Not that I disregard speech therapists, they're great, but no. So the day that Noah was so I found out first through the school district when they said Noah was autistic like, and I'm like, okay, I can take this report back to the regional center, but I have answers. I mean, I was like dumbfounded because my idea of autism was Dustin Hoffman's character in The Rain Man, and that wasn't how I saw my kid. And so, because in our day, as you know, there were no kids with autism. You had very rarely, maybe one in a whole school where they had, some sort of neurological disorder or handicap. But never did you see several in a classroom like today. So I ran back to the office after the evaluation. I had to grab something, and adjacent to our office was my naturopathic doctor. And I was part of the Beamer study, and he was the medical director for Beamer at the time. And so I saw him in the hallway. And again, there are no accidents. God sent me my second angel. And I was crying, and he asked me what was wrong. And I said, well, Noah was diagnosed with autism. And he said, well, I'm here to tell you that Noah's going to be okay. And I needed to hear that at that time. I think every parent needs to hear that. No matter what your journey is, no matter what path God puts you on, you're going to be okay. It's all going to be okay. So he's like, doctors are making great strides with biomedical intervention. Now, I was a psychology student. I had no idea what biomedical intervention was. So I immediately sucked the tears back up into my eyes and almost ran home and got to work. Back then I could do Google searches in 2008, just so you know. And I could get some pretty solid answers and some great organizations that were helpful. But today it's very politicized, and unfortunately somebody can't just Google. So I say read books because there's many out there. Aaron Siri just released one. I mean, I wrote Warrior Mom for a very specific reason, to tell my story, to also give parents a little bit of a guidebook and some biomedical intervention, a protocol that was followed way back then. Now, there's so many different things today, which is why I write a Substack. And to me, learning a little bit more. So writing the Substack gives me an opportunity to write those articles as to where they can have solutions for those issues, right? And then even the link between vaccines and autism. So even before all of this is coming about, there are several published studies that link, autism to vaccines. Or the fact that adjuvants cause neurological damage. They're neurotoxins. And sure, Fumarisol, sure, they took it out of the MMR. Great for you. But it's still in the flu shot, the most common shot given to everybody, children, adults, everyone. And the levels of thimerosal in those shots are dangerous levels. And not that thimerosal should be in injections anyways. It's it's like back in the day where they were I'm going to just say, I don't know what they were thinking, what doctors were thinking. They used to give mercury cocktails for people thinking that they would get better. Um, when they had, certain, when they had depression or when they had anxiety, or well, let me give you a mercury cocktail. And then they had Mad Hatter's disease was caused by mercury. So it's it's generational. It keeps going, and when are they going to stop it? So my final angel came along when I was on a retreat the first year of COVID, 2020, summer of 2020, and I met this woman. She had just written a book. And I'm like, wow, I've always wanted to write a book about my journey so I could help families because I was so lost. Where do I start? What do I do? Where do I go? What are my resources? So I wrote my book so parents can have a little bit of a guidebook. They can have some inspiration, from my story. My son's 20 years old. He's fully functioning. He just traveled to London for 10 days on his own, and he traveled to Japan for 3 weeks on his own. Japan, he had a little bit of anxiety. That was a longer trip, but, he made it back alive. And honestly, he works full time and he saves money so he could travel. He's the most responsible 20-year-old that I know. He's liberal. So, but, can't win them all.
Yeah.
there isn't a biomedical cure for that. So I can't change it. I just get to love him. He's a loving human being
Right.
and he does really well. But really just when you put your faith in God and you trust the process, trust that there's a process for everything, even the bad stuff that happens in your life or the bad people that come into your life, it leads you to this very moment of who we are. It's our makeup. I've had a lot of bad things happen to me in my life, but I look back and I'm like, wow, if you just live your life in gratitude, because I've always lived my life in gratitude, even as a child, I'm like, there are kids that are starving in Ethiopia. That was a big theme in the 80s. So I thought to myself, wow, I have food and I have a roof over my head and it's not bad. And no matter what's happened to me in my life, I've never played a victim. And I've never, thought to myself, woe is me, my life sucks. Because somebody's life out there sucks way more than mine or yours, right?
Right on.
So,
Well, the book is Warrior Mom, and where all is it available?
so you can buy it online anywhere. Some Barnes and Nobles carry it. I did go through a publishing house, so it, pretty much Barnes and Noble. And you can get it from my website, warriormom.com. If you want a hard copy signed, then I can send you a hard copy.
What's your website?
Warriormom.com or .org. I have both.
Warriormom.com. That's easy.
I even have the trademark on Warrior Mom.
Nice. Yeah, so when you mentioned being military, we put this authority in our, we trust the media, we trust our doctors, we trust, have all these things that we trust, right?
Yeah.
And at what point, were you like, I mean, obviously when you saw the one vaccine, but did it open you up to all the vaccines, or did you start questioning everything? Like,
so when I started doing my research, when I went home, back then they had what you call DAN doctors, Defeat Autism Now. This is Autism Research Institute held this conference, and they had doctors who went through an additional certification to address the underlying conditions associated with autism. And so I was calling like crazy looking for a DAN doctor. Now at the time, my husband, who fights big insurance, different, that's on the other side, right?
Right.
Wound up on the front page of the LA Times in a smear campaign the same year Noah was diagnosed with autism. So it tanked his business for 20 years. So I was bartering for treatments, I was negotiating, I was doing whatever. But it made it very hard. All these visits were cash only. So I set a clear intention that my kid was going to live a normal functioning life. I didn't let anything stand in my way. So I started selling whatever I could. I started bartering, negotiating. And my naturopathic doctor also assisted me with finding the right Dan doctor. And I did. She was in LA. She's pretty amazing. About 90% of her caseload were kids with autism. And so that was where my journey began. And when I took Noah to see her, and she ran the battery of tests, which was like urine, which is to check for heavy metals, fecal tests to check for any types of, parasites, dysbiosis, candida, and blood work. So a battery of blood work. And from that, we had baseline. And I always tell parents it's good to just have a baseline. There are some amazing functional medicine doctors out there these days. And you can reach out to me at Tracy at warriormom.com. But to me, the number one thing is to set that clear intention and not let anything stand in your way. Our house went into foreclosure, all these things, but I made sure that my son received every single, doctor's visit, treatment, whatever. So it was in that moment that I knew what to do because she guided me. So she was like, you know what? Your son is vaccine injured. So she informed me that my son was vaccine injured. When I told her the stories, and she said, your son did not get a rash from the vaccine. He got measles from the vaccine. I had a picture of it at the time. And, so I that was my first guide, and Noah was 3.5 at the time. So we always say early intervention is key. And when I say early intervention, like age 2, the earlier the better. So I kind of got a late start because my doctor kept having me. It was like I was like a hamster on a wheel. Running in circles, not knowing, not having any answers, keep asking her, why is my kid regressing? Oh, by the way, that's normal. Your kid regressing. They regress, then they progress. And I'm not the first family she did that to. I ran into 2 other families, 2 other parents, no accidents. It was at little tea talks or parent meetings. And they're like, oh, I have the same pediatrician. She told me the same thing. And same story, same song and dance. That's why I say, my original story is not, 100% original. It's not original. This is happening all over. And it's not just vaccines. So if you think that your kid is safe just because they didn't receive a vaccine, that's not the case. We have acetaminophen, we have glyphosate, we have volatile organic compounds. If it smells pretty or you like the smell of it, I guarantee it's a volatile organic compound. The new card smell, your candles, unless they're like organic candles scented with essential oils, your air fresheners. Oh, I hate when I go to an Airbnb and there's nothing but air fresheners plugged into the wall. I'm like pulling them all out. I'm opening the windows. It's crazy.
Wow.
So to me, we have to remove those toxins from our environment because what these kids are experiencing is toxic overload, right? They're not born with autism. In my personal opinion, they're not born with autism. So you can have pre-genetic dispositions, like let's say MTHFR is a big one. Almost all these kids have a pre-genetic cursor for MTHFR, which means their body doesn't methylate properly. And if you don't methylate properly, you're not getting rid of those toxins. So if they're not getting rid of toxins, they're just going to float around in the body, right? So we need to methylate, we need to get rid of those toxins, and then we need to address the gut first. The inflammation on the gut equals inflammation on the brain because the gut is connected to the brain via the nervous system. And then, with that, you get leaky gut, which means, you have a break in those epithelial cells in the intestinal lining, and the food particles get into the bloodstream, toxins get into the bloodstream, and then they act as opiates on the brain. So you have kids with self-injurious behavior because they don't feel pain, you know?
No.
Um, so all these different things. So I compiled it all into a book the best I could because I was mentoring parents for about 13 years before I wrote the book. And I'm like, wow, I need to just put this all in a book because I keep repeating myself over and over and over again. And if a family can't afford, I think right now my book is actually on sale on Amazon. But if they can't afford the 10 bucks for a book or whatever it costs, which I think is a great investment in your child's future, then I'll send them an ebook. But regardless, parents have to stop. They can't sit and make excuses for, my kid's a picky eater. He only eats pizza and chicken nuggets. Well, he only eats pizza and chicken nuggets because you feed him pizza and chicken nuggets.
Right.
So take the food away from the baby. If your child will drink water, which is key, you can keep them alive. They'll eventually eat. They will. I know it sounds terrible. My kid threw food at me forever, and he eventually ate the broccoli. So it just became real food for a long time. And then as I was healing my son, I was inadvertently healing myself because I had all kinds of inflammation in my own body. And, it started this beautiful healing journey. And then God led me to write the book and to speak to parents, to educate parents. Then I started Autism Health and the Autism Health Summit. So I started an annual conference so parents can know how to address those underlying conditions associated with autism to get their kids to a functional state. And then from there, the organization came about, and it was to raise money for the scholarships for families. But now we are gearing ourselves towards research. So we're partnering with different organizations like Dr. Goodnow Enterprises with Prodrome Science for plasmalogens to help repair the myelin in the brain. And so we're partnering with all these different organizations. Ed Clay at CPI, who, you probably seen him on Joe Rogan a few times because Joe Rogan goes down there for stem cell therapy. Well, we're going to be doing a research study for kids on stem cell therapy. So many things, peptides. I really want to do a research study on peptides, fecal transplant. Dr. Sabine Hazan is working very hard on, putting together a study for fecal transplant. It's, these are all the things that make a huge difference in these kids' lives. And I feel it's super important for them to be able to have this information, address these changes, but you have to stop making excuses.
Right on. Tracy, thank you for sharing your message. Thanks for getting on the arc. I think it's great that your son's name's Noah.
Oh, absolutely. How perfect is that?
And we're getting on the arc. So I
Yeah.
love that.
So upcoming, we do have the Autism Conference, April 24th through 26th in San Diego. You can go to ahsconference.com or autismhealth.com, and you'll see under the events page where you can, register for the conference. We're going to have some great speakers. I'm still working on my speaker list, but we're going to have some pretty phenomenal speakers. Dr. Ryan Cole, Del Bigtree always comes back. Dr. Brian Hooker, some of the lead researchers and scientists. I really want to get Aaron Siri out I got to send him an email, but we'll see what he's up to.
Wow, that's awesome. And this is in April in San Diego.
Yes.
Okay, that's a great place to be too. Actually, year round San Diego is beautiful, so even April is great.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Tracy. Thanks for getting on the arc. Thanks for watching Get on the Arc. If you feel led, or if you feel like you want to share your story, reach out, and we will have you on Get on the Arc. And any closing thoughts for
Oh,
mom and dad?
absolutely. God brings these beautiful individuals into our lives for a reason. He puts us where it is that we need to be in service. And when you're in service to others, life gets to look a lot different. It doesn't mean that it gets to look easier. My life things don't come easy, but it is very rewarding when a parent walks up to me and says, "Thank you. You saved my child's life." So think of that. If you need to reach out to me, you can reach out to me at tracy@autismhealth.com or warriormom.com. And, either one of those websites. And I say, if you're impacted by autism, to attend the conference. It's going to be amazing. It's always amazing. It's fully catered, coffee all day. And we will have some amazing experts and doctors and researchers and scientists and parents, coming out to share their stories and to assist, these families in their journey with autism or other neurological disorders. It doesn't have to be autism.
All right. Well, awesome. April. What are the dates in April?
April 24th, 25th, and it's like a half day on the 26th.
Okay, April 24th through the 26th, San Diego. And they can go again to
ahsconference.com or on autismhealth.com. There's an events, page where you can drop down and it has the event there.
Okay. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
All right. God bless you. And until next time.
God bless.
Yeah. Get on the arc.